Employee engagement is at a 10-year low. That's based on numbers from Gallup, and we know that leaders have a significant impact on engagement right now. But it can be challenging for leaders to create the conditions for strong engagement when they're living in an environment of constant change themselves. Many leaders assume engagement is about energy or attitude, but often it has a lot to do with clarity, confidence, and connection. Today, we're talking with Jennifer Brown about what change does to people and what leaders can do to help others stay connected and energized right in the middle of it. Jennifer Brown, welcome back to the Blanchard LeaderChat podcast. How are you doing?
I love this, that we're doing this again, Chad. I just always love our conversations. Always.
You have been one of our favorites. So glad to have you back again. You talk about living inside change rather than observing it. How does being inside change affect a person's engagement? How does it really affect them with that that nuance there?
Well, I think we can feel some level of agency in inside change if it's possible, right? Because it can throw us off balance, it can hijack us, as we know. It can lead to not doing our best thinking, and it can also lead to rash decisions and lots of stress on our body and emotionally. So there has to be, I think the thesis I'm working with right now is that there has to be a new capacity for existing in and thriving in the middle of complexity, change, unpredictability, ambiguity. To me, it feels like there's kind of no more important leadership competency that we should be working on. And if I describe it that way, to me anyway, having been in talent for many, many years in leadership development, I just don't know if we've really focused on that to the extent that we've needed to, and we now really need to. We really need to dust off those competencies and look at the world as it is now and what is being thrown at leaders and managers and individual contributors. Understand that the human can only metabolize so much before the hard drive crashes, and that we have to exist with this, almost partner with it and work with it in a different way. And instead of resisting, defending, avoiding, being traumatized by it, how can we kind of change our mindset towards it and have a different relationship with it?
The book, your latest, The Shape of Change, and we're going to try to attack that topic from all different areas. But this next question is one of my favorites because it just hits home because of all the changes that are just happening in all of our lives. But, what happens to engagement when people really feel uncertain about who they are or where they fit with all this change?
Yeah, well, obviously performance suffers, productivity suffers, loyalty and trust suffer, and all of these things are related. And we've known this, Chad, I come from the world of inclusive leadership, right? So we've been looking at this for a very long time. How is trust built? Well, it's built through, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel valued, I feel included, and I feel that my opinion matters, and I trust my colleagues, and I feel trusted, and I trust my leaders, and I feel trusted, and I trust my institution to do the right thing, to have my back, to see me. So we in my field have been talking about this for a very long time. But what happens in this kind of environment is there's so many doubts being raised about all of those things. We don't see each other physically in the workplace anymore. So trust can suffer in that way, I think, because often these kinds of things are built in those interactions, and we're deprived of a lot of that. We are hearing sort of these nonsensical messages from leadership about what's important or priorities, like we're rolling this out, we're rolling that out. I mean, it'll be 2 seconds before we bring up AI in this interview, but just the way, as somebody who specializes in organizational change, the way that things have been rolled out so rapidly without a lot of thought or care And regard for the impact on the people in organizations is amazing to me, not surprising, but still amazing if you expect on the back end buy-in and participation and innovation from that very thing. And so I think there's so many factors diminishing and breaking the ties that we need to do great work together and to really care about the work product and the output and who we do it with and how we feel when we do it. So there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of fear. And look, when we're in a sort of fight or flight mode that fear produces, we are absolutely unable to concentrate, unable to utilize our executive functioning. And certainly if trust is low and we need to collaborate in order to create great things together, we are going to be isolated. We are going to not lean on others. We are going to not want to be seen because we're afraid that, we will be next, kind of thing. So it's just, I'm very concerned about what I see and hear about what's happening in workplace cultures and how people are being treated, how they're feeling. It is actually the total opposite of what we have been talking about for a long time, of valuing the human and enabling people to actually relax in the workplace so that they can have access and bandwidth to be creative and innovative and collaborate with people. But you can't do that from a place of fear. It locks you up. It prevents connection. And it truly prevents, I think, the genius of humans when you're in survival mode. And we all know this from the Maslow hierarchy, right? If we're all being pushed to the bottom of the hierarchy and that's where we are living as a society, this isn't just a workplace thing, that piece around self-actualization feels further and further away for a lot of people.
Jennifer, we've spoken a lot, and you speak about energy and you speak about capacity. And one question I have for you is when someone is low on energy, how does that show up at work?
Yeah, we get low on energy for a lot of reasons. I think diagnosing it is so important, starting with analyzing what am I doing when I'm low energy? I think we experience flow states when we're doing things that are in our genius, in our sweet spot, feel easy, feel effortless, feel that they give back to us, almost like they recharge the battery as we're using it, so that we feel energized. And then similarly, we all know in our days with our tasks and jobs, I hope it's not a whole job, but there are many elements that de-energize. And so I do think that understanding when that happens and why, and then I hope we can continue to make choices for and against doing certain things, working in certain realms, having the agency and the confidence to advocate for a day-to-day and an hour-to-hour existence that feels mostly enlivening. But those times that diminish our light, there's so much information in that about what shouldn't I be doing right now or in the future. What is it about this interaction? What is it about this, this work that I'm engaged in or this moment that is diminishing me and diminishing my energy? There's just so much information in that. So I think becoming hyper self-aware, because we are going to need a lot of energy, but we're going to need to work smarter, not harder. We've been saying this for a long time. This is not new. But the smarter, not harder thing's interesting with AI because there's now a helper that I think can alleviate some of this working harder, not smarter, that de-energizes us.
Yeah.
And feeling that we're not alone in the task, alone in the displeasure of certain things, but that we can outsource it and then benefit from that to then make some space to say, what is it that does bring me joy, that does feel enriching for me, that does feel sort of awaken my creativity and innovation. I think anytime you're not feeling creative, because I think our natural state as humans, it should be being creative if we're feeling safe and cared for. But when we aren't in that space, I always ask myself, well, what's going on that I can't access that? What's happening in my life? Where am I distracted? What am I worried about and anxious about? What am I doing about that? Do I have a plan? Have I asked for support? Have I advocated for myself? Have I, really asked some hard questions about maybe letting go of what's comfortable and, setting off on a different path? All those things I think we should be constantly questioning. In this world that's moving so quickly, we must be questioning all the time and recalibrating. And, anything that is too stable, it's like, I, I almost would not trust it. I mean, I stayed in my field for 20 years, and looking back, I think to myself, there were changes happening all along. There were moments all along that I noticed, and things that there were endings that were trying to happen, I think, that I wouldn't let happen. And I think we can probably all relate to this whether it's our personal life or our professional life, where we knew on some subconscious level, this isn't serving me or in exactly the way, or I'm capable of so much more, or I've outgrown this, or, this is boring to me. It used to be interesting, and now this is interesting to me. But listening to those things and honoring them is, that is a survival mechanism now. I mean, more than ever, we really must heed things, and we must heed them quickly and early, because we're not going to have these long careers where we have lots of chances to extend things indefinitely. Everything is going to be changing around us quickly, and being nimble and letting go and reforming around something and, experimenting is going to be our currency.
I always find it, interesting that I think when there's a lot of these issues and changes, you always think somebody has the answer. So from your research, what have you found about how difficult it is for leaders who you hope have the answers, who are trying to keep their teams motivated while they're actually navigating
Struggling.
a lot of uncertainty themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. I think being a leader right now is so hard. I mean, I'm the person that wrote on inclusive leadership in the last 20 years, and I was asking people to do something that was hard. I mean, I always knew that. I knew that I was putting information in front of people that challenged their sense of self, that challenged their worldview, that challenged what kind of leader they think they are and how effective they are. So I would get on stage, Chad, this, and say, like, hey, are you sure? Like, are you sure you're creating a workplace that generates belonging and enables the best from people? Like, how do you know? And are you still employing, old tactics to a new world? So I've been actually trying to set the table for change and inviting people to that looking in the mirror process, and then to be honest about it, transparent about it, to say, I don't know what I don't know, and to lead from a place of vulnerability and authenticity, to say, I want to be real, and I believe that I don't always have to have the ideal answer to maintain trust with people. And so we've been working on this, but it's funny how the framing of it has switched, I think, from I want to be a more inclusive leader and everything that went into that from my teaching, to how do I comfort and reassure people at a time when they feel like things are coming apart at a sort of foundational level? How do I name that? How do I frame it? How do I acknowledge? Because when you acknowledge, trust is built. When you acknowledge and when you personalize it, trust is built with people who may not like what you're saying, and that may not be good for them, and it may hurt, and it may cause more uncertainty. But I do think that there's also, on the flip side, an appreciation and a trust that's built for and with leaders who figure out how to communicate in this time, and who are also very honest about the process that they're going through. And this can be storytelling. This can be a lot of, I picture leaders in fireside chats and kicking off team meetings and at offsites and in one-on-ones. I mean, there's so many opportunities to acknowledge this moment and all that is complex about it, and all that is a paradox about it, and all that is unsettling about it, and naming what that creates for people, and admitting and being open that we all feel it. We all are experiencing this, and we don't have a lot of answers. And what do we believe in? What do we believe in? What has been true for us? What has been the trust that we've had in each other? What is important to maintain? What is, for leaders to use that opportunity to underscore what they do know, what they do know, and how they do value, and how people are valued and are integral and are essential and continue to be essential in the ways that we were talking about earlier about wisdom and judgment and human interaction, and all the complexity of that. So I do think, but leaders need a very different script and talk track and I'd say courage. It's sort of like, the courage to be an inclusive leader always meant I have to show up and talk about what I don't know and be transparent about what I'm learning and ask for feedback. All of that stuff, I think people have already been practicing. And this is kind of taking it to a new level because the disturbance in the system is even bigger, even more systemic, even more societal, not just confined. It's never been confined, but I think it's the fear is broader and more kind of diffuse and therefore really unnerving that people are feeling. So I really would encourage every leader to choose their words right now with a lot of heart and really go out of their comfort zone to lead in whatever way really resonates. Because without people being able to just feel comforted and reassured in a moment, they will not be able to produce and be productive and creative. And that to me is the loss in the ROI of ROI, but also just on the bottom line is probably massive right now. The drag on company performance is massive because of what is going on. And I think a lack of leadership and lack of leaders that know how to hold this space right now. So if you're a leader and you're saying a lot of the things that you've always said, and you kind of give your go-to things, and you haven't really kind of changed it up, I would really recommend doing a deep dive into a new vocabulary right now, because the old stuff is not going to do it for people, given what we all are coping with.
I want to drill a little bit deeper into this because there's got to be a leader listening to this in the car, listening to this on their morning walk, listening and shaking their fist saying, but there's no answers right now. There's no clarity right now.
No
so
clarity.
What advice do you give to those leaders? How do they make meaning without pretending to have certainty? Because, that's how you lose trust.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I mean, people might appreciate the effort, but they won't believe you. They won't believe you unless you're real. And there's only so much you can fake this moment. So, like I said, I think the ability to choose those moments of strategic vulnerability. I don't like that because I don't like the strategic part about it. But I do believe there is a way to make meaning and connect the dots of where the possibility is right now. In every crisis and the scarcity that we sense about our world right now, in the constraint, there's actually huge opportunity. There always is. And in the book, I talk about the seasons of nature, right? And winter seems like it's a dead season. It seems like nothing is happening. Well, it's only because you look at it and it looks that way. But there's so much preparing itself. There's so much happening underground. There's so much composting happening. There's a reformation of nutrients. There is life. There is life. And what we need to look differently at situations to see that. And I wonder if a leader can say, I'm looking at every situation with a different lens to tap into a momentum that I'm not used to seeing. Like, where is there creativity happening? Where is there community bonds that bond us? And where is there great work happening, collaboration and problem solving in the midst of constraints, in an environment of uncertainty and ambiguity and nonlinearity? Where are there things that we can be certain about and celebrate and encourage? And also, what is being developed in this time that would never have been developed if we weren't in these constraints? I think that's such a fascinating question to ask ourselves. Like I would say with DEI going through the changes that it went through in my many, many years in it, the constraint that I've been in has caused a whole different line of thinking for me. It has actually opened up a conversation like I've wanted to have, like this one for a very long time. And it's opened up, a different level of curiosity in my audience and different audience coming into the conversation. And I feel like it's almost elevated me. The constraints actually elevated what I'm paying attention to and gave me, it like switched my framework. It just, it kind of unencumbered me and it freed me in a really interesting way. So these are juxtapositions that might be interesting for leaders to play with. It's like, well, what is happening right now because of constraints that we haven't seen before, that's unprecedented? And maybe what the work is then is encouraging this mindset shift that we always look at scarcity as bad. We look at the winter as something to be avoided, but it's actually something to perceive differently. But it's a leader's job to make meaning out of new things that aren't on people's radar screens, things that people don't normally think of as growth or progress. I think that's a leader's job to actually look around and say and inventory everything and say, there is so much happening right now that it's such a lesson for us. We're learning so much. We're actually creating in ways that we never even thought possible 6 months ago. And I want to take that apart. I want to understand, like, how did we get here? And how can we go from looking at this as a deprivation, and maybe it is a deprivation of certain things, but it's the enabling of so many other things too. And look, this is not just a leader's job. I mean, I would say there is wisdom about this question that I'm asking throughout the organization. But the conversation needs to be convened, I think, by leaders who are very, very good at making meaning in new places. So you're not on your own to harvest all of this, but I would include a lot of people from all different, untraditional places in your day to day to say, what do we not see? What do we not yet appreciate? What can we be encouraging? What's working well? What do we want to do more of? How are we, again, be able to do things that we never were? And what does that mean? What's the significance of that? Do we want to do more of that? Anyway, so the reframing is really the skill. And I hope that doesn't come across as I'm making lemonade out of lemons all the time. But if we just look at this moment as just giving us lemons, it just depresses the whole system. And it's actually not true. It's actually just one way of looking at what's happening right now. But there are other ways of looking at it. And I think that's way more generative for us.
So many ways, yeah, and you're right. Sometimes it is a bag full of lemons, and we have to make do. But I like that it's about the way you bring yourself differently to work. But let's focus a little bit now around a little bit more around engagement. We often say engagement. It's not actually a motivation problem. It's a leadership clarity problem. And when people understand what's expected of them, they feel supported, and they know how they're growing, we usually find that engagement rises. How does this perspective connect to your work on navigating change?
Yeah. Again, like, gosh, what a great lead in, right? Like leader clarity, which is hard right now because everything is very murky. I feel that every day that I'm not even sure the answers, quote unquote, are available for us. Even though we might want them and we have always been accustomed to leading with them. Getting comfortable leading without answers and without clarity is what we're talking about, what we've been talking about. So engagement in the big picture and where we're going, and feeling that you're in the know, feeling that you understand. Leaders are also, the job is difficult because they're getting pressure from above to execute. But the pressure is often this blunt instrument of just make it happen. And this is what's happened with all the AI rollouts that they're saying have been, largely ineffective, or worse. I would say they've destroyed a lot of trust, and I'm not sure it can be rebuilt because this massive tool was quote unquote rolled out, but not following any tenets of human behavior, let alone, change management best practices. So the leader's job, again, we talked about it getting harder and harder, the squeeze between the expectations above and then what people need in order to adopt, in order to buy in order to the clarity that they need in order to say, to believe in their role and to believe in their importance to the output of a company, their continued place in that equation. And I do think no leader can promise employment forever. They never have been able to. But I do think a leader that you feel is advocating in the middle of this whole equation, pushing up to say, I need more clarity. The people who work here in this culture need to understand more. They need to understand where this is going. I want to communicate that. I need to shape that. We need to shape that. What I like most is leadership teams who really take the responsibility on to slow down, to speed up, to take responsibility for how is this going to feel and be metabolized by our organization? What's going to come up? Let's anticipate what's going to come up. Let's talk it through. Let's think about, how to do this in a way that is humane, that is digestible for people. Anytime you force something through a culture, you are asking for breakage. And in this kind of frenzy that we're in right now, with the pressure to, prove that you're, investing in and rolling out and everybody's using XYZ, this is just not how people operate. So that decision, to me, I'm not surprised the failure has happened and the rates are really high and that we're having to go back to the drawing board and think about, well, how do we institute this massive change, probably one of the biggest changes the workplace has ever seen? How do we institute this? How do we involve people in what that looks like? How do we set up listening processes so that we can get feedback about what's not clear? How do we show up with transparent messaging that is honest and that is, sending a message that this is something that we care about it working, and we aren't just going to force it. We aren't just going to just look for the metrics of utilization. We don't care how we get there. Great cultures, to me, are made when leaders say it matters how we get to this destination. It's not enough for us to be able to say we did it, which is ridiculous anyway with the what's happening now. But how we felt on the way there, and how did we know, and how are we keeping tabs, and how are we adjusting and being agile and responsive to asking people to make enormous changes to the way they work, the tools that they work with, at a time when there's a lot of fear about their employment, about their security, and about the world. Going slow and spending the time that I think people deserve to be heard, to be involved. And none of this that I'm saying right now is saying and recommending that we don't do it at all. It's really, how is it done? I mean, it's integrity, I believe, but not integrity just to the bottom line, and not integrity just to shareholders. This is integrity and accountability to the people that make a workplace sing, that make magic every day for clients and customers, and go the extra mile, which, by the way, you can't survive without thinking through the complexities of the humans and the customers and the consumers and the whole equation. We are not in a place where that all can be automated, and we are a far ways from that. And it may never work in that way. So, it strikes me, this short-term thinking about the collateral damage that companies are willing to undergo and cause in the name of being able to say that they're doing something, is such short-term thinking and so destructive. And I'd like to know that there are companies, and I'm not deeply acquainted with very many because I'm not in these rooms quite yet, but who is taking the time and the care to ensure that their most critical asset is playing a healthy, balanced role in this massive, massive change. So, like, I just laid out kind of the vision for how it should go, but I don't know how common that is. And everyone will say, Chad, but we're in such a hurry. We have to do this yesterday. We're behind. Like, I don't care how people feel. It doesn't matter. We just have to sacrifice this because we have all these pressures. And do you? And what will be sacrificed along the way? What are you burning? If you're burning one level, you think you're gaining one level, you're burning another. You are absolutely squandering so much of what made business work that you probably took for granted and that you probably never saw, because goodwill is this intangible, invisible, like I said, it's the sort of enabler or catalyst of actually why people buy from a certain brand, why people want to work at a certain place. Like, that is the magic, I think, of great companies. And I'm not surprised, but I'm really saddened to see the way that things have been handled. And I hope that there's a wake up call, and I hope that there's a part two or a V2 of this that is just looks very different.
What do you think a leader should do differently if they want to re-engage someone who is feeling disconnected?
Yeah. Well, owning the way things were done, and giving people a chance to talk about it, to talk about the impact on them, to allow for that conversation with, facilitated, to enable people to feel heard. And look, this is a complex technology that nobody knows how to actually roll this out. I mean, I've said everything I've said. Not saying this is easy, because we are all in new territory. But I think that's something that a leader can lean on to say, there's so much we don't understand. We don't understand. So we're rolling out something that we do not have a grasp on. And that you could call that irresponsible. But it's also a time of experimentation. But when you are experimenting with your workforce and your workplace culture, how do we name that ahead of time in a way that asks for grace and forbearance and opens up channels for listening and for owning and taking accountability for unintended consequences? Because I don't think a lot of this is intended, but the unintended consequences are so destructive. So what I would say is that it's not never, but it's not too late to open up the channels of communication, feedback, enable the information to flow, and not just shut people out or tell them to fall in line or tell them if you don't do this or else, or any of that energy which people are feeling. To open up that dialogue and then act on it. That's the other thing. You cannot do this without then running it up the chain and truly considering it and truly showing the ways that you plan to act on it and do things differently and improve your process. How do you plan to iterate and improve the way that, what did you learn from what you did before? And by the way, there's some things that might have really worked. So all these feedback processes that I'm talking about are part of the hygiene of any huge change initiative, which this is the identification of what went well, what worked, what was effective, and then the courage to ask what wasn't effective. How are you feeling about the process? How we're getting to where we want to go? What are we missing? Where are we missing buy-in and participation? How are we not addressing the elephant in the room in the culture? And what might we do to enable the calming of the nervous system, the collective nervous system in the company? Because people talk and they kind of infect each other too. And I think we're all kind of infected by this world right now. And it's hard, it's extremely hard to shut it out. I mean, more hard than it's ever been. So the outside world is also kind of renting space in our hearts and our minds too, and making it extremely hard to focus as well. And I think we go to probably a negative place too, and assume not positive intent. So while leaders have to own the impact, not just the intent, oh, we intend to make you more productive, and we intend to this, and with this, whatever, we intend that this will happen and more easily, more quickly, more efficiently. I listen to some of this messaging and I think to myself, where is the person on the receiving end in all of this? What time was devoted to imagining how this is going to land for people? It's just incredible to me that there is not that emotional intelligence going on, and I have to come back to, is it a lack of caring? Is it just things are going too quickly? I don't have time. Like, what is it? But it's amazing to me, there is no regard for the importance of this being a two-way dialogue. So that's what I would say. Oh, create the two-way dialogue and have the courage to slow down to get it more right. It's always going to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it can be more right.
The research shows that highly engaged teams usually are 21% more productive, and there's significantly lower turnover. But from what we're hearing from your research, engagement can get so fragile during change. So real quick, rapid fire question for you. What's one behavior that leaders should stop doing during change? And what's one behavior they should start doing immediately?
Stop regurgitating the things that you're being told to say, and start, if you are leading and you're receiving directives, start running everything through your empathy lens, and your lens that understands that engagement is this might be fragile, but it is incredibly integral to your ability to accomplish anything at all. So if you find yourself caught in that unfortunate place, and I think a lot of people are, their ethical sense probably feels very, very challenged right now. This is your opportunity to be an ethical leader. And if that means that you have to exercise muscles that you haven't before, and you need to stand up for things, for people, you need to stand up to say, slow this down. If we need to take care with something, if we need to say this didn't go well, and here's why, and here's what we're going to do differently, be the leader that demonstrates what this sounds like and what it looks like, and be the leader that articulates and reminds people that without engagement, we are nothing.
What do the best leaders do, Jennifer, to create conditions for a strong engagement? What do they do really well?
I think they're in frequent touch. They're present. They're honest. They are humble to what they don't know, and they communicate that. They are able to create meaning and sift through what might look like the bag of lemons, to use your words, and help people reframe things. Like, I think that's such a beautiful skill to have. It's perspective, right? I think we all struggle with. My own partner says to me, like, you need to change your perspective when I'm having a really bad day. And it's so simple, and it's so hard because we kind of want to wallow in the bad stuff, right? We know it's addictive with social media. And I mean, goodness, it's the best business model in the world. So literally the best leaders, I think, are developing their capacity and commitment to reframing things, helping themselves reframe and helping others reframe and look for the opportunity in this moment. And I'm not saying that's easy, because they are coping with their own destabilization. And by the way, this is what leadership makes it hard, because you are having your own experience as a human in this changing world, and others are accountable to you, and you are accountable to them. And that's what you sign up for. I guess that's why we get the big bucks, not. But so it's not an easy job, but it's really amazing. It's an amazing job, because I think creating some kind of like understanding of this moment, if that can be your goal every day when you wake up, you're not trying to answer it. You're not trying to predict it. You're not trying to solve it. None of those things I think are possible right now, but you are helping others to sort of understand what they can and kind of, ground in that, and then feel that they're not alone, and that feel that collaboration, feel that camaraderie, feel that there is good work happening, and be reminded of their capacity, of their potential, of their value as wise beings, as they're being reminded of that goes a long way right now. And then being included for that also is super important for engagement. Purpose, meaning, significance, all of those things. I know Blanchard and I, we believe in these. We will perish as humans if we don't feel we matter, and that we're working towards something that matters, and that we are making a contribution that we can see and that we can understand. So I don't think answers are necessarily like the silver bullet that we think they are. I think there are a
Yeah.
lot of other incentives here that we can get creative with to engage the humans, engage their heart, engage their mind, engage their thinking about the future, engage their wants, their needs. There's so much wisdom in our organizations, and I fear that ramming technology through is literally like leaving this enormous asset on the table and losing people at the same time, and we don't want that to happen.
You're going to get the final word here. It can feel overwhelming. So for that leader that's listening right now that feels like their team is drifting or they're disengaged, what is one small action they could take this week?
I would do an Ask Me Anything session. I would, or do one-on-ones. I'd say if there's drifting happening, I would just reconnect and ask different questions, engage people to talk about real things and what this feels like, what this moment feels like. I would do that in whatever format feels comfortable. Sometimes in groups, people don't want to speak up, or it depends the level of trust you have with people too, because they may not open up one-on-one or in groups. But I would I would challenge us all to have new conversations about different things than we normally talk about. And this isn't just, oh, what did you have for breakfast or how was your weekend? This is an acknowledgement of why people are feeling so overwhelmed right now. And I would also say to the leader, share how you feel overwhelmed and what overwhelms you, and what sorts of techniques you use to bring yourself, get grounded again. And it might be beautiful to share grounding practices amongst each other as a another piece of what you might do, to say, I think we could all learn from each other. Like, what do you do to calm the fear response? What do you do to be able to concentrate again? Or what do you do when you have a moment of feeling unstable and, about the future? What grounds you, what brings you back, what reminds you of who you are, what reminds you of what you're capable of and what you're able to do, and all of your future potential. What gives that to you? That would be a really important exercise. And then do more of it. Listen to it. What does it tell you? What are people telling you? How do you need to lead as a result? You might find that you really need to lead differently after doing this. My guess is you've been on autopilot and been, applying the things that have worked and not really, really acknowledging that people are in a very different place and not really leaning into, like, what is that? And then what kind of leadership? It's kind of inside out, right? It's what kind of leadership is needed because of this, situation, to use your language. Leadership is contextual, and it should never be the same. It really should always be evolving. But how can we evolve if we don't ever stop and have these conversations that I just suggested? How can we know what we need to evolve to? So I think there's some ingredients in there that will guide you down a different path and hopefully lead to actually an evolution in you and others and in the trust that you all share.
The book is called Shape of Change. Jennifer Brown, it's always a pleasure connecting with you. If our listeners want to learn a little bit more about you, where would you send them?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm at jenniferbrownspeaks.com. Jennifer Brown Speaks on Instagram. I'm all over LinkedIn. We always do programs. I'd love to have any of the listeners here follow us, join our webinars. Obviously, I have other books besides The Shape of Change, so check those out. They're typically on inclusion and inclusive leadership. And I'm also on Substack.
Jennifer, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Welcome back.
Thank you,
Thanks
Chad.
for always being such a great guest here on the Blanchard LeaderChat podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you enjoyed the interview, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and please share it with your friends. The best way you can help us grow is feedback. So write a review if you haven't already. This podcast is brought to you by Blanchard, the heart of human achievement. Visit Blanchard.com for additional resources to help you and your organization succeed.